What is up, guys? Welcome back to Bitcoin Audible. I am Guy Swan, the guy who has read more about Bitcoin than anybody else you know. And this show is brought to you by Fold and the Fold debit card and their gift cards and their roundups and their auto DCA and their auto conversion from ACH. Literally, if you were looking to get as much Bitcoin as possible in as little as work, just set things up and then have them all automatically stack sats on a regular basis. The best all-in-one package for that is Fold. Literally make Fold the center of your banking and fiat life, and there will be ample passive sats stacked. We are back with another episode of Guy's Roundtable. Mechanic, Steve, and also my brother Jeffrey, who doesn't jump in for like 20 or 30 minutes, all join us today. And there's a lot of interesting stuff to break down for December. Oh my God, Blackrock says that 21 million Bitcoin is not guaranteed. What are we gonna do? Saylor is going crazy and he's just issuing debt and buying Bitcoin every single week. Some new news from El Salvador and the IMF. Lots happening on the Strategic Bitcoin Reserve. So much wonderful FUD has returned that I've missed so dearly, and so much more. And the Roundtable is your one-stop shop for hearing all about the important news and events and getting the take of some really long-time Bitcoiners who've been around the block a few times. So let's go ahead and jump in. We are wrapping up December of 2024 with Guy's Roundtable. We are here with Mechanic and Steve and myself. We are starting Roundtable number 5, wrapping up December, which isn't wrapped up yet, but we've got a lot to cover anyway. Welcome to the show, guys. Welcome back. It's been a minute. How y'all doing?
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you.
Amazing.
Happy to be here.
Steve, can you show everybody your huge head?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So for my wedding, people made huge cutouts of me and my wife. This is mine.
I was about to ask why that happened. You know, your expression is the best part of that.
Yeah, it's awesome. A little blue steel for you.
You look like someone from the World Wrestling Federation. Like that's what.
Oh, thank you.
That's the vibe I get from that.
Cream rises to the top.
Oh man. Mechanic, how you doing, man?
Yeah, pretty good.
All right?
Yeah.
Can't complain?
Yeah, I think my general state at the moment is like, it feels exactly like 2016, where the bull market is back. We survived another bear market. The energy's fresh. And the most stupid people are making the most noise. And like because 2016 was big blockers, right? And all I did, and it was peak Reddit. So all I did was sit on Reddit all day arguing with big blockers, this astroturfing going on. And it was like a job. And I've spoken about this before. Like when the Bcash hard fork happened and I dumped all that, I was like, right, this is my payment for arguing with you idiots as a self-appointed job like that I did for the last 2 years, arguing with you idiots. That feels exactly what's going on now. So all I do all day, like the Blackrock FUD, right? Like we had to write an ocean rebuttal for that on LinkedIn. And it's like,
oh my God,
I get tasked with this stuff. Like, so BlackRock are going to come along, buy all the coins, and then they're going to destroy the 21 million Bitcoin limit. Like, and people don't realize this. And just, that level of argument. And I'm like, my goodness, like we haven't thought of that in 2011. Like, we've discussed this. We've been there. Yes, it is possible, but here's the kind of thing that would actually mean, right? And let's reason about it. But everything's all sensationalist. Like, the quantum FUD keeps coming back, and it's just dealing with that over and over again. The BlackRock are here, and they're going to destroy everything, and you're not going to be able to do anything with your stupid Raspberry Pi when BlackRock say there's going to be more than 21 million. And then there's all the just actual ocean FUD as well, like people just complaining about ocean all day or just not understanding it. Like, the payout system on ocean is quite complicated, and explaining how that works to people is like, I will spend hours on like meetings with miners just being like, no. Every time they think they understand it, they're like, right, so if I do this, then that will happen. I go, no. So it's like, it's really, really hard. Like it's some of the hardest stuff ever to do. It's like, but yeah, just to round off the point, in bear markets, you don't have any of that because you're just left with people that have got it. They're here for the long run. They're not panicking every 5 seconds because they haven't over leveraged themselves to the tits. Like they just know what they're doing. And so like they're not panicking because quantum computers are around. Like you just don't have that in bear markets.
Yeah. Bear markets are the best from a mentality standpoint. I've always felt like, and the thing that gets me about bull markets and the people I think who are, just kind of really going through the beginnings of their first, maybe they got in the last bull market and they just beared market this whole time, is to recognize that the overwhelming majority of hate, attacks, FUD, like it is, like it started and it will be permanent, basically until the next bear market has set in. And it's only going to get louder and more annoying and more insane. Like everything, like, yes, there's like exuberance and great, but almost I feel like it was, pretty much like there's this weird dichotomy where during the bull markets, there's nothing but bad news and attacks and people screaming Ponzi and all of that stuff. And they're screaming it louder than they've ever screamed it because now they're butthurt that they're not in it, and then in the bear markets, so it's nothing but bad news and people screaming and hating it during the bull market, and the price just rockets up. And then during the bear markets, it's practically nothing but good news and building and new implementations and new services and everything. And everybody just, the price is just like dead. It's just like sideways and nothing is happening. But that's kind of what I feel like. I really feel like the bull market this past couple of weeks, I feel like the feeling, where the mentality is, the fact that everybody's having to comment on it, it's finally feeling like the bull market's starting. And it's funny, I've had conversations with a number of people who be like, so this was a crazy bull market and now it's peaked and stuff. And I'm like, no, dude, you have no idea. You've clearly never done this before, or you have a short memory, because this is not the end of anything. This is we're walking through the first chapter here, setting up this era.
And also, like, what happens with this idiocy and this influx of normies is that they over leverage and then they become a catalyst for making the next bear market worse. So that's what happened with 2021 and the Saylor hype and all that. Is people bought on leverage and Core Scientific went crazy and FTX blew up. Like, none of that would really happen if it was just this slow growth of like boring cypherpunks that just slowly stashed and hodl and slowly grow the stack. It's just we get over exuberant, we blow off top, and then everything completely falls apart, and then we rebuild from the ashes again.
Yeah. And speaking of that, since you brought up Saylor, do you think Saylor's making this way worse by the strategy that he's basically blasting out there to everybody?
You mean with this like infinite money glitch?
Yeah, just basically kind of encouraging people because of the apparent success of it to go into leverage.
To be honest, I don't blame him, and I don't really. If you can get cheap credit and you can buy Bitcoin with it, like, why wouldn't you buy Bitcoin? Like, I don't, and why wouldn't you tell other people to do the same thing? Because it just gives you a return faster. So I don't know. I can't really hold it against him, to be honest.
Yeah. It's kind of the same thing with the U.S. Strategic Reserve. It's just kind of like, well, if they can do it, they will do it. Bitcoin's for everybody. Bitcoin's for anybody. You can't really stop anybody from getting Bitcoin. My worry about Saylor is the Coinbase worry. Like, eventually, I feel like something's going to happen at Coinbase. They're going to get hacked. They're going to be found to have rehypothecated a bunch of stuff, and the bigger that they get, the bigger of a meltdown that's going to be in terms of like price for a little while. Of course, Bitcoin will be fine, but yeah. My issue with Saylor is just wrapped up in the whole Coinbase thing. Of course, like people are going to do the speculative attack and borrow cheap money and buy Bitcoin. Like, of course, that's going to happen. You can't stop that.
Yeah. Talking about the strategic reserve and then talking about what Saylor is doing and talking about and wrapping kind of Blackrock into this as well is the people who are saying, I mean, sure, you can have opinion about whether or not you should applaud this or you should be super stoked about one thing or the other, but the idea that somehow we were supposed to get here and like governments weren't supposed to buy it, or we were supposed to stop an ETF from happening, or that somehow Bitcoin is screwed because an ETF happened, or because a government might be purchasing it for a reserve. Like, I don't understand how, like, what is going, did you just think that we were going to succeed and take over the world and anybody with wealth wasn't going to get involved? I don't quite see what's the vision that they had for it? Like, how were strategic reserves not a part of the inevitable outcome of Bitcoin's success? Like, how did they intend to prevent it? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I do take issue with the fact that anyone's surprised by the fact that rich and powerful people are going to own a lot of Bitcoin. Like, there's nothing you can do to stop the world's worst people. But they come up with that trope, Bitcoin is for enemies, right? And that's usually the retort to that. But there are some implications from it. But what's annoying is the people that are worried about it never have a sensible like impression of what that really is. Like, I don't see, BlackRock pushing for an inflationary fork. And if they do, I mean, we did this, guys. That's what 2017 literally was. It was throwing money at people to use UTXO forks. And all we did was just pocket the money and carry on the real Bitcoin. And they got tired of it, and every single fork was less and less lucrative. So we've done it. Like, SegWit 2x was a lot of money. Like, you could sell every Bitcoin you had for 0.2 of the hostile takeover coin. And then that would be 0.2 Bitcoins, which you then sold for even more.
You mean Bitcoin Cash?
No, I mean SegWit 2x on the futures market.
SegWit 2x never launched.
The futures market. It existed before it existed.
Market. Yeah. Oh man, yeah. I didn't play that one, but I wish I had.
Yeah, well, it was a risk because you had to put Bitcoins on Bitfinex.
It's custodial.
But this is why people hate Tether and no other stablecoin. This is why they get trashed for it, because all the big blockers and their dreams got ruined because of how Bitfinex provided that market and allowed us to dump their coin before it even existed. That was a genius move. But I mean, it was just free money, right? You got basically on average, once you sold and then resold the new coins, you just kept cycling it around. You got 0.3 Bitcoin for every Bitcoin you had. And, that was all the money they had. Millions of dollars were just handed to Bitcoiners, in the stroke of a few hours. And it was honestly one of the most surreal nights of my life. But, yeah, that was...
We're going to have to come back to the BlackRock 21 million not guaranteed, because I know my brother, even though he kind of deserves it because he's not here, I know he will be very, very upset. And it's Christmas, so I can't do that to him if we talk about it too much while he is not here.
All right, let's come back to it.
So we will wrap back around to that.
I was going to add, it's not specific to BlackRock, but in my mind, when we talk about these things like, oh, how come you guys didn't learn lesson the first time? Or like, we've been this before. We know what happens. We know they can't change consensus. I wonder, like, to what extent is this people need to learn, and to what extent is this eternal September, where, like, if we zoom out and we think about Bitcoin being forever money, like, there's going to have to be a new class every year.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, it's freshmen coming to college, and it's just like, it's not like this lesson can be learned once. Like, it has to be learned afresh every few years or something if Bitcoin's going to be forever money,
Yeah.
So I don't know. Need patience, I guess.
Yep, that's a good point. That's a good point, is that, the reason the same FUD comes back is because there's people who have no foundation for how or why the FUD failed last time. for millions of people, every halving is brand new. And so minor death spiral.
I think you'd say that you need to reinvent the wheel every 4 years, basically.
Yeah.
Like it's like this is everyone has to have that same eureka moment, and they have to experience it and go through it. Like I do think FTX doesn't happen in a world where everyone experienced Mt. Gox. So FTX happened because everyone on it didn't learn the lesson from Mt. Gox, or moreover, they just didn't know anything about it. It's not like they fell for it twice. They just were never there back in 2014, I guess.
Yeah. I'd like a simulation. Like there's flight simulators for pilots and stuff, so they don't have to actually crash. Like we need like a Bitcoin fork simulation environment where you can see these dynamics play out.
Well, they have those like trading simulators, right, where they swap the buy and the sell button, and then everyone makes money. It's literally, but I mean that's trading, right? Psychological. Your emotions just they panic and they want you to sell when it's down, and they make you exuberant and overconfident when the price is up. So
that's so funny. I don't think I've ever heard of that.
No, it's a thing. Like almost everyone loses money trading because your emotions are just your absolute enemy. Like, and the only way you can master that is not by being like some robot. It's by being a billionaire that doesn't mind playing around with a couple $100,000. Then you have no emotion. So that's why like
you take it out of the equation or whatever.
Like
because you've not got
If you're broke and you've invested everything you have in Bitcoin and the price has just tanked 50%, who is going to deal with that? Like if you have family and stuff and you're like, yeah, babe, sorry, I can't make a car payment now or something, like that's not reasonable to expect anyone to deal with that. So I guess that's why you got to stay humble.
Yeah. So one thing that I wanted to hit on, I'm not going to go on these in entirely in order, but I thought this was really cool because I did not know it until like Johnny pulled this into the list. I didn't catch this one. Was Rumble allocated up to $20 million of excess cash to Bitcoin, which I don't know. Did anybody else even see this in the news?
Nope.
Because that's actually pretty awesome. And I know they've been like kind of interested in it and stuff, but in the terms of people who are, or companies or whatever that are getting into Bitcoin, I like to see groups or companies that are kind of more philosophically aligned to, or recognizing the same problems that I think a lot of Bitcoiners recognize, whether or not they are a permanent or a temporary solution or whatever, just ideologically aligned in some context, allocate to Bitcoin, because that was one of the things that always gave me hope for the future, is that there was an ideological alignment to why you might want to invest in Bitcoin that was very anti-state, anti-tyranny, essentially the surveillance and control system that we are stuck in. It's a 1 foot out the door kind of thing. So I'm not sure anybody saw that. If you have any thoughts on it, but I thought that was pretty cool.
How much was it?
$20 million of excess cash reserves.
And they're going to hold it just on their like corporate balance sheet or something?
That's what it seems like. I didn't go into the full statement to see exactly what they were going to do with it, or what their time span was.
I think maybe I've brought this up before, but I'm going to maybe get a lot of hate for this or whatever. Take the minority opinion here. I'm not sure I like companies holding Bitcoin on their balance sheet. It's kind of like the most KYC you can get. Like it's
just as far as like just visibility. And what do you mean, like in the context that it's like the prime 6102 target, or?
Well, that, but also just kind of, if you're a company and you have a treasury and you want that to be in Bitcoin, I mean, if you have like control over this company, like you can either keep it on your balance sheet, or you can just pay yourself like a big salary or take a distribution and then like buy it personally. And I would just prefer the person to have that coin like individually rather than the corporation have it. I mean, I know this is just my opinion. Yeah.
I think it's less about the company doing it in lieu of the person. Like, like what's in the company treasury. It's basically just the company saying, we're not going to get murdered by inflation either. Like what we do business in will be held in like a decent money. Like I think about it in the context, like the corporation needs to be on a sound money standard for us to end up on a sound money standard,
I guess that's
Yeah,
fair.
it would be nice if there was a way around it, though. Like, yeah, officially, like a sort of Latin American, under the table kind of vibe about it, where it's like, look, officially, all our treasuries are in United States dollar, but for some reason, our Fortune 500 company only has $3 to our name. All of our money really is in Bitcoin, but that's all. It's not off the books exactly, but it's just done in a way where it isn't. It doesn't look like what it is. That would be nice. And also, like, there's one. I don't know how you would even do that, but there's also the additional like assumption you can make that if a board of executives has decided we're going to own Bitcoin as a company, every single one of them individually presumably owns a lot of Bitcoin as well because they understand it. They've got an orange pilled. So on net, it probably works out for every Bitcoin in, a company's treasury, there's going to be some ratio of equivalence where like Michael Saylor owns a lot of personal coins as well, and so does like the only guy I would think that doesn't is Brian Armstrong because he's just managed to, what's that thing like wisdom has been chasing you but you have always been faster. Like Bitcoin has been
or Brian Armstrong is the only person with private keys to all of the Bitcoin of the ETFs and so he's the only person that owns Bitcoin.
Oh no.
Yeah, that's like I'm a little bit of a purist in the sense that I think Bitcoin, the way it's designed, has this property that it's for people instead of it's for individuals instead of for groups of people. Like the idea of a group of people owning Bitcoin is a very difficult concept. I mean, sure, you could have like a multi-sig and then it's like it's owned by 5 of 7 of the people or something like that. Like, I guess that makes sense. But the idea of like a board of executives owning Bitcoin, I mean, let's be like practically, we're just talking about some legal contract they have with Coinbase. It's just like, okay, I guess they kind of own it. Like the concept of ownership just kind of goes away as soon as you get away from the individual. It goes into some state.
Isn't that why God made multi-sig?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
no, I agree. It can be done.
Are there no organizations really that haven't done it that way?
It's more concrete in the individual instance, but I think it's also the only thing that can actually be owned in a group sense, legitimately. Like, from the context of like dollars in a bank account, like that boardroom doesn't own that, can't control that. Like they're subject to like the entirety of control and value proposition of multiple third parties. So the boardroom kind of has this, they play this game of they control it, but they're still completely subject to somebody else. Whereas in a multi-sig setup, you actually can have a group essentially own it, even though you could argue that it's still an unoptimal setup. Like maybe maybe you would want it to be split up as something better. But I would say that Bitcoin is the only thing a group can technically own.
That is true. Yeah, if they do it right with the multi-sig, it is the only true group ownership.
Yeah.
But I just think practically that's never really going to happen. I mean, not even MicroStrategy can do it right.
Well, it just seems they're not doing it. They're all just, like you said, it just seems like they're not doing it. Like you said, they're just holding it with Coinbase, which is just doing the exact same thing in the fiat system that they're doing in Bitcoin, which just kind of defeats the purpose.
Coinbase,
at least my fault.
How many UTXOs have Coinbase got control of at this point?
I don't know. Probably a lot, man.
It's interesting that they don't do the proof of reserves, and everyone on Twitter thinks that these stupid metrics from Glassnode, like coins on exchanges, are somehow officially reported numbers or something, because I don't think anyone has an estimate that's 50% correct about what Coinbase has.
Probably.
I think it's a complete mystery. Like
it's all snake
the
oil.
on-chain. Yeah, like the exchange held and exchange inflows, exchange outflows. People need to know that this is a giant estimate and a very fuzzy thing, and this is not on-chain data. Exchange inflows are off-chain data.
Yeah.
Like it's just like an estimate from clusters, and
Mm.
there's no way to know if these are anywhere close to anything accurate.
A fun one for people into trading is just watching new blocks. Like every time a new block comes in, the price on Coinbase drops because that's just new Bitcoin. Yeah,
Really?
it's very consistent. If the price is flying up and up and up, and then new block it goes, then like for 10 minutes it will keep flying up, and then new block. It's like it's pretty predictable, especially around the 100. Like the first time we were running up to 100K and we didn't hit it. Like I admitted, I was glued to the price for that whole period of time. It was exciting.
Do you think that has to do with some kind of algorithmic trading based on new information coming out in the blocks?
Yeah, because I mean, there's two orders there, right? So primarily, it's because new bitcoins arrive at the exchange to be sold, and then there's other people speculating on that.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Yeah, that makes sense.
And it also makes sense that it would only be one way, that it would largely move to sell. The sell side, because you don't. Confirmation of withdrawals don't change the price. They're not on the order
exactly
books, so they don't have a 10-minute relationship at all, whereas deposits do. And I think we saw that with there was some specific thing. I think it was during the whole fork wars that I'm picturing.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was with Bitcoin Cash. Is they were saying, look, people aren't selling and the price isn't, whatever. And like the price isn't dumping, and it shows that this thing has legs. But it was during the time when they were having like 2-hour blocks and like 4-hour blocks because of the EDA.
Mm-hmm.
And every single time a block came in, there'd be this sharp thing down. And I was like seeing that, and I was posting on Reddit. I was like, nah, dude, people just can't get their Bitcoin. Like your super better chain can't make transactions and deposits, and people are having to wait like 6 confirmations. So when blocks aren't coming in, it's literally just you've already killed all of the capacity to sell, and you're just waiting for blocks. Like you're watching the crash in slow motion, but whatever.
And a phone call got made too, because it's such a small centralized thing. They're like, look, phone the 3 miners we have on this thing and tell them not. If someone's sending 40,000 Bcash, just don't include that transaction in the block. All right, they're trying to sell. Don't let them move it to an exchange.
It's going to Coinbase. Don't let it go. Oh, that's hilarious.
Another reason that might be happening with the new blocks lately is because there's a lot of old coins on the move lately. I mean, the correlation of old UTXOs coming out from hiding with price increases like pretty well known. But it's just amazing.
You have any fun data from UTXO.live?
I look at this shit every day, dude. I was writing an algorithm 2 days ago that was trying to basically make a chart based out of spent coin ages.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I'm pretty sure I can find a multiplier, and I'm just going to multiply the median age of coins spent yesterday by some number, and that'll show you pretty much what the price is. Like
That's
the
awesome.
correlation between that is just amazing. But
you have to post it. I'll try to get it in the show notes.
Yeah, well, now I got so much shit for UTX Oracle screwing up when the spam came. I'm hesitant to.
My biggest gripe with Saylor is over the arbitrary data thing. Like he wants to do this decentralized identity thing using this.
Yeah, that's his worst.
That's the same hack as the inscriptions, right? Not even using op return. So that was my what are you doing?
I wonder if Saylor doesn't seem the type to ever admit mistakes, but I wonder if he's talking to his therapist or something. Oh, okay, yeah. I was pretending to be Michael Saylor at his therapist, talking to his therapist, and he would never admit this publicly, but I think he'd be like, actually looking back, kind of screwed up with that whole mining, climate, energy thing that Marty got on him about, and also kind of screwed up with the DID thing. I think that's him looking back, but not in public.
About the DID thing. I totally forgot about that.
Yeah, was I was done with Saylor after that. That's just unacceptable, man. It's like
Yeah.
it's also just like it's peak hypocrisy when he's saying never do any upgrades on Bitcoin because you'll break it. And I'm like, well, we did actually once break it, and you're using the thing that happened when we broke it. So, like, what are you talking about? Like, is this to punish us for it? To like really show us never do another upgrade because I'll use it, the unintended consequence of it.
Yeah.
I mean, he is a 5D chess kind of guy. So, and loads of people have told me
For
like
sure.
this whole, what is it, paranoid crypto anarchist thing that he likes to, that thing he said.
Oh man. News items. So we saved it. We did talk a little bit about it, but we saved the Blackrock thing
Okay.
for when you got here. Merry Christmas.
Thank you.
Because we definitely should have gone down that entire tangent already. But one thing that I wanted to hit, and I'm not sure if you guys have dug into this, but I thought this was a really, really cool. I felt like there has been a inability or a lack of interest in building things that kind of take a trade-off to the time that you have to trust someone. Like everybody's just like, it's either fully trustless or it's not worth building on, or it's like fully doing one thing. And there's like, we're having a hard time with the middle ground. And I thought this was a really, really cool proposal by Luke Childs. It's non-custodial eCash, a trust minimized payment system. And it is built on, it's Spillman payment channels. So it's the one-way payment channels. You only you only pay out. And it is eCash. And essentially what it does is it does these updates periodically and only basically while payments are in flight, like going from one person to the next and the transaction is occurring. Do you have a trusted situation? And if the mint disappears in the middle of that, or there's an uncooperative exit or something, then you run into some sort of a conflict. But that the update of the process just ends up changing the channel and you basically have a unilateral withdrawal. And it essentially creates a pending versus confirmed situation with funds that are being transacted. And it creates a trust minimized credit system on top of Bitcoin built with channels, and it does not require a soft fork. And also it seems to be pretty simple, like from the context of like how ridiculously complex and how many moving parts are there and how easy is it to implement that trust trade-off for the time in question for the transactions basically makes it able to make it easier or to make it simpler to implement. And I have not dug enough into like really technical details, but the proposal itself, from just kind of a naive like running through the thing once, just seems really cool. It just seems like a really good middle of the road. Like this is just a way to vastly improve the idea of custodians and the credit system and what we think of as credit and and payments and stuff, while still basically getting the benefit of both. And then it's eCash. So you still get enormous privacy and the benefits of eCash at the exact same time in the day-to-day operation, which I just thought it was really, really cool. And I've been hoping somebody would kind of build this thing. Like just the idea of covenants and CTV always had me thinking is just like, well, what if you just had like a 3-hour update and like everything was temporary until the 3rd hour, and then you just have like settlement times, and then everything else is guaranteed after that because you have the ability to UTXO out of the situation. But anyway, just thoughts on that, and or if anybody had dug into it or explored it all.
I knew nothing about it, but it sounds good.
I knew nothing about it either. If Steve is an expert,
Yeah, me neither. You're alone on this, guy. But it sounds
Well,
awesome.
let
Anything
awesome.
somebody can do without update.
let me ask some
Yeah.
questions then.
Oh, it's
So
great.
that's Luke Childs, you said, the umbrella guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and I missed some of the description there. So Spillman channels, well, like if I recall, that was what Lightning could have been before we fixed transaction malleability, right? So that's why it's one way instead of bidirectional, and it was always like seen as inferior. But it seems like, I mean, so you're opening a channel with a third party essentially, or is it with you? And you're provably you pre-allocate an amount that you want to spend, and or that might ultimately be spent in one touch of the blockchain, right? So you got that one footprint, and then you just move over and over again. And this is the subscription model, like to a T, right? So if you subscribe to whatever it is, like home insurance or streaming service or something, you're like, all right, I'm going to be buying crap off these guys for the next 5 years, and it's $20 a month. Every month you just sign a new thing that says, all right, 20 bucks worth of Bitcoin more are now on your side of the channel, and you just keep moving it and moving it and moving it until eventually you just close the channel, and then they have all their money, or they close it because they need it. Is that basically the concept?
Basically, yes. As I understand it, that's essentially what it sounds like. And everything outside of that is basically a trusted eCash credit, and then there are periodic shifts to essentially channel rebalancing or whatever, to essentially confirmations of getting a new exit UTXO, and then you can just deal with your degree of trust and what you're willing to pay to get what degree of trust for how you're doing it. And in this case, you can just use it as a purely spending wallet. And the only time that those transactions are fully trusted is just while they are in transit.
Right. So I missed that bit. Sorry. That just for my own benefit, I'll be the dumb guy here. So it's like they're issuing you some sort of eCash based on whatever it is you send to them in the Spillman channel.
In the channel.
Right.
Yes.
So how does the eCash they issue to you become trustless and non-custodial?
There is some sort of a update that occurs. I can't remember at what frequency, but it is a 2 of 2 musig between the user and the mint. So everybody connects to the mint. And when the eCash, I think basically the eCash is just used as the way to designate what the updates will be. I don't know the time frame well enough. I don't know specifics. I was planning on doing an episode on this. I did an episode today on eCash. Actually, it was more about the overall idea. But the general sense of this, I think, is just eCash until you get a signed UTXO.
Man, this stuff like this, it's crude and it works. It's just why I'm so annoyed with the people like pushing for these emergency soft forks all the time with like Bitcoin screwed if we don't have this soft fork. I'm like, there's just so much that can be done. And this was like, Steve was the one that made this point, and we've already done it on this podcast in the past, but it's just such a good point that if thinking about who it is that focuses on, I was asking this morning the people in the internal chat we have at Ocean, like just discussing upgrades, and it's like for every developer that wants to build coin pools using covenants, there's 10 guys that want to do something with cat JPEGs, and that's going to be how these things get used. And not just that, but then there's Jimmy Song's point as well, which is anyone that's working on what proposals like what Luke Childs just said, or people doing Liquid, or people doing like Fedimint, or anything like that, if you add new opcodes, then they have to change their whole design to take advantage of them. So they're less inclined to build their things out. Like the more you change Bitcoin's foundation, the less incentivized people are to figure out everything you can do with it as it stands, because it's going to change. So people just kind of stand around watching instead, while we just bike shed around which covenant to add. So it really does. It's just against Bitcoin's progress to keep changing it at this point. There are trade-offs, but like that's almost never acknowledged. It's like if we add new primitives, we'll be able to do more. I'm like, it's not that simple.
Yeah, I definitely think it makes sense to me that we should only do targeted sort of upgrades or changes, and so. If there's a way to get lightning symmetry or something like that, if we have, I still think something, and nobody's like really working on it anymore, I don't think, but if you could get cross input signature aggregation or something in combination with, like APO or something, something like that, it would be fantastic. Like that would be like the ideal. But if we can get something that specifically makes the stuff we're using work, like, a lightning symmetry or whatever, makes stuff that we actually have and need to improve better, that's one thing. But then the rest of it, like these like abstract, like, well, we could build stuff that's better if we had this, and like, okay, build it on liquid or something and show us that we need it, like
Well, cross-input signature aggregation is dead as far as I can tell. I was super hyped about that for years, but it's just not happening.
Yeah, me too, man. It's like nobody wants to deal with the responsibility of working on it or something. Or
just basic buy-in isn't there. Like
maybe we could start a GoFundMe and or a like a crowdfunding and pay Peter Wella to build it.
It ain't that though. It's that it's not really desired. Like in the specific world in which it was supposed to be like a game changer was CoinJoin, like equal output coin joins for privacy, right? And Adam Gibson, who made Join Market, which is my favorite CoinJoin implementation, is like it ain't all that. Like it plateaus around 20% the efficiency you add by adding more and more inputs. Like and he's like, I'm not doing it. And he like gave, like, we were sitting in a restaurant and he wrote it all literally on a napkin. Like, here's the maths of it. I didn't understand any of it, but he's like, right, you don't understand, but conclusion, it ain't all that good.
What, CISA isn't?
Yeah. And then
really?
Max Hillebrand from Wasabi similarly is just not, he's like, look, they all have to be this. You can't do cross input signature with like, this one's a taproot address and that one's a SegWit address and that one's a nested. Like they all have to be the same address type, and in practice that's not going to happen. So we're just going to we'll just carry on doing coin joins the way we are now. He's much more interested in zero knowledge proofs and all that stuff. So if I can't get those guys interested in it, and they're basically the tent poles of the whole coin join privacy world, then it's dead as far as I can tell.
Yeah.
Like you need interest from people that are in the relevant areas, and they're like, nah, we're not into it. And then there is a cost to cross input signature, which is like you can do the transactions involved are expensive computationally for a node to run through, right? If there's a very sophisticated transaction in a block that is, thousands of signatures all condensed into a small amount of data, you can fill up a block with that without much footprint, but that takes a long time for a node to verify. And that has its own risks.
The trade-off is computation rather than block space. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point. All good points.
I don't know. I guess I didn't think about the fact that the signatures all had to be the same or whatever, that makes sense. But I don't, like, since we have different signature types, isn't that like, if you add cross out input signature aggregation, isn't that like the incentive to use the ones that work for that? Or like, is that?
Yeah, you think so. But
yeah.
I don't know. It's contagious. Once I see the people working on these projects, just be like, nah. It's almost impossible for me to devote any mental energy to it. I don't see like even all these like proposals.
You have to have builders excited about it first. Like because if nothing gets built with it, it just doesn't matter.
Yeah.
There were two items just about even though all of this, like I think one of these got pushed back again. But Ocean Pool, we know somebody there, is donating or allows miners to donate rewards to the P2P Rights Fund for the Samurai Wallet's legal defense. And then good news, Fifth Circuit lifted the Tornado Cash sanctions, citing that it was overreached by OFAC, that they did not have the authority to do that. And that is, that seems to me like a huge win for their court case, because it's kind of that designation that suggests that what they did was wrong. You know what I mean? As far as producing the software, if the software isn't even something that can be sanctioned, then I think it suggests the designation that I think this is good for both cases. On top of the fact that you can, donate your rewards, which is pretty cool. Shout out, Mechanic. That's awesome that y'all did that.
Oh, thanks, man. Let's see how much people are mining with them at the moment. Oh, I don't have it up, but yeah, like it's probably still not even exceeded $100 yet, but it's only BitX guys that are like actually doing it, right? Someone was like, I want to see one exahash pointed at this address. I'm like, have you any idea how much effort it takes for Ocean to like get an exahash to come over to our pool? It's like I have to fly to Europe multiple times to convince people to do it. Like the idea that we can write a tweet like, here, donate to Samurai, and someone would send an exahash to it would just be like, I don't know. I don't think people know how much an exahash really is. It's like millions of dollars in electricity a month.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's so crazy to think about. And we're actually trying to, the HVAC guy for downstairs will be here soon. And we're going to finally put in ducting and figure out what the heck we can do with that. So I can get my miners back up downstairs.
Dude, get a Watts miner over an Ant miner for sure. And if you,
I have 2 Watts miners. I mean, they're not great. They use a lot of energy especially for what their payout will be now. It's M30Ss.
Oh, that's a really old generation.
That's old. It's old. And in fact, I might. Are all the newer still 220? Because if I just run the lines for them,
yeah, nothing
should be pretty simple.
Nothing's been 110, and you can get Zach Bomster does these Loki boards or Nord boards. He's got 2 products.
Yeah.
You know about all that stuff. You can make.
Oh no, yeah, I've been super jazzed about it. I've got Nord boards.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So he's working on Watts miners now to make them have the ability to run on 110 as well. But it's
Nice.
I just don't like doing it because like that doubles the current through the wires, and I'm already like I hate like North American stuff. Like you can't electrocute yourself on a plug in the UK. Like it's impossible the way they're designed. If I got a sticky plug in America and I like wrap my hand around it wrong, I'll literally electrocute myself. You get used to not doing it, but when I was first in America, I was like, like I can't electrocute myself because you just wrap your hand around it. Oh man, you can't do that in the UK. And also, the double current really worries me because you do see miners post pictures. Like Austin Barnhill posted one yesterday of just a melted power cable that just,
That's scary.
Every miner's got a horror story about a fire. And I'm just like,
Yeah.
I really want to heat my house with this stuff, but it's Bitmain. It's all like corner cut cheap junk. Like the power supply. Like I really want to heat my house, but I don't want to burn it down. Like,
dude, I've got a.
I don't want to heat it that much.
I'm going to order in my new setup. I'm going to order there's a fire extinguisher or whatever. It's like basically like a canister that you can just put in the ceiling or whatever. I'm just going to stick it in the sound box or whatnot, and it's just heat sensitive, and it breaks the seal and just dumps the thing into it. So I'm going to have I already had poor man's fire protection, which was a Python script that requested every 30 seconds the temperature of the miner, and if it ever got out of a certain range, it would just send a sleep signal, and if it never got a response for the sleep signal, it just pushed kill signals indefinitely. That was my poor man's fire protection, but definitely just in case going with the heat activated fire extinguisher right in the box.
Where do you get one of those? All the products I was trying to get this ball that if there was a fire, it just exploded foam everywhere, but they don't make them anymore. So that tells me they were like,
the one I saved, I'm pretty sure was on Amazon.
It's
literally just a
look on the Amazon for that product and like click on it and it will be like shipping unavailable, like current product currently not available.
No.
Yeah, they just don't exist anymore. Like I really, really, really want one because I'm gonna burn my house down with an S9.
That's weird. I've definitely seen there were some 3D printer people that were like worried about 3D printers being left unattended and getting clogs and something catching fire, and so they were rigging up the same thing, like just what he's talking about. It's like a little canister. And once it gets over like a certain, temperature that indicates fire, like it just sprays, it dumps its full contents or whatever. But it's been a few years ago that I was watching people suggesting this, but it didn't seem like they were like a problem to get hold of.
Yeah.
If you want to save in better money and you want 20,000 sats for free right now, it's about $20 at $100,000 of Bitcoin. Check out Fold. Every time I swipe this card, I get 0.5%, sometimes 1, sometimes even 1.5%. I can get 2, 3, 5, even 10% on gift cards with major merchants. Between the roundups, the gift cards, the auto stacking, the sats back on every single swipe, Fold literally does all of the work for me, and it is denominated in Bitcoin, and I have more savings just by using this card than like 90% of the United States normal consumer. I've got a referral link for you right here. Shout out to Fold for sponsoring my work and honestly being the most important service for my being on a Bitcoin standard.
Well, I'm definitely jazzed about plugging it back in, but the M30s don't make any sense now on anything other than low power, just because they're most efficient there. But I still think I'd be losing money just because it costs way more to run the miner than it does gas heat.
Let me give a shout out to a friend. Like he's called Toyn, or his Twitter is at TronMonGone, like TronMonGone. But he does this for a living. He just goes to people's houses and installs miners in their HVAC system, and like,
Wow,
and
that's awesome.
He has every like trick and trade in the book for like what firmware to use and how to make it sensible.
I need to talk to this person. Yes,
You need to do an episode on it.
He got me to buy this like $60 thermometer.
Oh my god, that would be great. Yeah,
there's a thermometer I got that just that will dynamically make the fan adjust. So you can, rather than set it so that you have a consistent chip temperature, it can be like, I want the house to be this temperature. And if the house is dropping in temperature, the miner will, bump itself up 400 watts or something.
That's great.
That's
so
cool.
Yeah, it's really, and also, but additionally, you can still have it so that if the miner is overheating, it will drop its power consumption down, because usually that's how you regulate them, with power rather than clock speed or whatever. But there's just a lot of cool tricks in the trade, software. And he's like, he's doing a good job, and he's like always just sending me updates, like with, data sheets and just measuring power consumption and stuff, and just dialing.
Absolutely send me the link, because I would love to get in touch with him.
Yeah, all right, I'm sending it to you.
That would be cool. I know my setup was like crazy ghetto. It was basically just the naive thing of like, okay, well, let me just put this into my ducting. Let me get a new return. Let me stick a infinity. What's it called?
Infinity fan? AC Cloudline Infinity fan.
Cloudline Infinity fan on it, and that was that. And I just had a Python script that Arceris put together for me to control it from my computer. And I just like watch my terminal just be running with temperatures and all that stuff. And if it got hot in the house, I'd be like, go to sleep. Literally, there's no thermostat or anything. It's just manual shit. Okay.
Well, Guy got me a BitX for Christmas, so I will soon be playing the lottery. I'm very excited about it.
Are you going to make your own blocks?
Yeah, I'm gonna try and get it all.
Datum will start 9.
Yeah.
Man, I set my datum to have it requires a difficulty of 67 million per share, or whatever the nearest power of 2 is. It takes about a week to find a share, and when it does, I get like 200 sats from that share, rather than like 1 sat per share, but they're every couple of minutes. So this is like custom lotto. So, right, people only have the 2 thresholds. They have like submit whatever the minimum pool difficulty is, which is usually like 16,000 or something. So it will find a few shares a minute, but they barely earn anything. Or go complete lotto mode and spend 500 years trying to find a block. And if you find one, great. But that's either pool's minimum difficulty, which is nothing, or network difficulty, which is at current 108 trillion. But you can go in between. That's what Datum allows. So you can set your network difficulty to be like 100 billion or something, which is not crazy. And you might find a share in 8 months or something on average. But maybe you find it on the first day you turn it on, in which case your BitX has just mined 8 months worth of work in one day. And and it will be rewarded as such.
That's awesome. I didn't even know you could do that.
Yeah, it's all about the difficulty that you require of a miner, right? So that's what miners do. They solve blocks when they're submitting shares to a pool. And you can say, you got to find me a minimum difficulty of, whatever it is, 65536, which is like 2 to the something. It's always the nearest power of 2. every roll it does that's lower than that is like a very, network difficulty 5 or whatever. That's useless, right? So that doesn't do anything. But if you meet that difficulty or exceed it, that gets normalized to be that many shares, right? So if you find a share that is, if your target is 1 million and you find one that's at 1 million or higher than that, when you submit that to the pool gives you 1 million shares rather than 1 share. So everything gets normalized, right? So all that is to say, if you find a share that's 1 trillion difficulty, but the difficulty you were set as a target was only 1 million, you still only get credited 1 million, right? So if you find a block like at 108 trillion, you're still only credited for whatever the actual difficulty of the pool was. So that's why like the miner on a pool that finds a block was only submitting 1 normal share. It wasn't like they submitted a special share. But the minimum difficulty sets the normalization value. So if you just keep bumping that up,
so you can basically set your lottery odds and play whichever degree of lottery you want to play.
Yeah. So my thing is
awesome.
Do once a year. Make it so that like on average with this difficulty, my BitAx should find 1 share a year. Then every day when you're checking the dashboard on it, if it finds a share, that was like the best day ever. To me, that is the peak BitAx experience.
The best day of the year.
Yeah, that's the peak BitAx experience in my opinion. Like, because you don't just go with what the lottery is. You go with what you want the lottery to be, right? Like, what's your tolerance for variance? Just set it as something that works for you.
Yeah, that's very interesting.
Custom lotto mining, man, it's the future.
Ooh, that's so funny. Okay, I want to talk about reserves because for El Salvador,
Wait, all right, time out. While we're on mining, did anybody, I just saw somebody posted on Facebook of all places in one of the Bitcoin groups about somebody just mined, like paid like an 8.13 Bitcoin fee or something.
Yeah.
It was a shitcoin mint.
It was what?
A shitcoin mint. Someone was like moving wrapped ETH to like Tether USDT or some crap like that, and it was genuinely a mistake. And
it was a mistake.
I'm sure Foundry already gave it back. Like
I was actually wondering, we had talked about smelting or whatever at some point before, but I got to thinking about it. It's like, could you not create your own transaction, put it in your own block, and then if you find put it in your own mempool, and then when you find the block, you include it. Like if you were mining, could you actually pay yourself like an 8 Bitcoin fee or whatever, and essentially
yes.
Yeah. Okay.
You can, but it's completely pointless because the transaction that paid that fee and then the fresh coins that came out in the Coinbase transaction are obviously from the same entity. So you're not fooling anyone. Second, you have fee sniping, which is where if your block gets orphaned for whatever reason, which happens like once a day, then it slides back into the mempool and someone else can grab it. This is actually a massive security concern for Bitcoin in the future.
Okay. All right.
So don't do that.
Do we know whether that transaction was broadcasted through the mempool or was it just snuck in there out of band style?
I don't know. None of my nodes picked it up because it was spam. So my nodes never saw it in the first place.
Well, that's what I was thinking is that if you did it out of band, like, I mean, if somebody didn't know that you were mining, like, I don't know. I don't know how hard it is to hide who you are as a miner or whatever. But, if you can just sneak a transaction in there out of band so it's not in there until you mine a block. But if there's fees, if you've put it into the, into the network or whatever with a block that's, not, that gets orphaned, that definitely could be a problem.
Yeah.
Well, you could make it less risky by making it non-standard. So you could make it like have op return of 1,000 bytes or something, and then it's less likely that someone will fee snipe it. But then it just goes back to being pointless rather than dangerous and pointless. So like
why? Well, I mean, it might not be pointless if you have a bunch of coins that are from the dark web or something, and you're trying to clean them. But
you can still link them because there's the block where this transaction in it where a guy spent 5 Bitcoins on a transaction fee, and there's the miner that mined that block who's paying themselves all those fees. Whoever mined that block is the same owner. Like that's not a difficult heuristic to
Right. But that heuristic isn't like implemented in current, like, chain analysis stuff. But
Well, and it might depend on
Good
how
point.
big the transaction fee was too. Like, I mean, if you're able to do it, I
Maybe.
mean, the more it's $1 each. It's $1, $2 each time if the chain is
You
not
could
full.
hide it, but
Yeah.
remember, then like you could hide it by breaking it up into loads of transactions and loads of blocks.
But then you have to have the mining power to do that, and
Right.
there's a lot of
You have to have like hundreds of millions of dollars worth of mining equipment to be able to actually find that many blocks, and it's like I just don't see it. Like there are other ways of doing it.
How did you say that the risk was minimized by, what'd you say? Putting a bunch of operator stuff in there or
just
something?
make it non-standard. So it's still consensus valid, obviously, because you need your block to be accepted by the network.
Something other people wouldn't mind.
Yeah, like something like make it below the dust limit, for example. Like make it have a bunch of 1-sat outputs in it so that just every node on the network's going to see it and go, no thanks. So then it's less likely to end up in the mempools of other miners. But if you publish if there's an orphaned block with it, they'll all know about it.
Oh, I see.
I don't think any of them have the tech sophistication to be doing this yet, but if and when we're in an environment where there's like 0.000 Bitcoins every block in subsidy and like 1 Bitcoin in transaction fees, I think pools are going to get it together and start figuring out how to fee snipe if the opportunity comes around, because that's the only revenue they're going to be able to earn at that point is from transaction fee revenue.
Yeah.
So like now it doesn't matter because you get 3 Bitcoins a block from subsidy. The transaction fees are still a rounding error.
Yeah. That's interesting too. It's that like, the fee market will create this weird incentive for the potential of fee sniping. But then at the exact same time, it will fix the incentive for censorship in a lot of ways, because it is the subsidy that allows them to make money, even though they don't include transactions.
Yeah.
So it's like there's still even this weird balance in where we are in Bitcoin's eras, so to speak, for what the trade-offs and the optimums are for, its different characteristics. So it's interesting.
This is a very good point. Like paying the censor, I didn't understand this point. Like subsidy, if someone wants to be a Bitcoin miner but censor transactions, they still get a lot of money from subsidy. When that dries up, then, as you say, the financial cost to censorship goes up relative to their overall earnings, which is like it's kind of another one of those free miracles. We've gotten through basically this whole phase of Bitcoin with enormous subsidy and no transaction fees, pretty much free at the moment, but now is like when we're at peak risk, in my opinion, like because we've got so much heat on us right now. Like now is, and we got so much centralization in pools and mining with just the worst people mining, like that couldn't care less about cypherpunk stuff. So like right now is like the time to pay attention. I'm just glad Ocean exists.
Well, honestly, this is why I think if
I agree.
The Blackrock, the rumor that the 21 million's not, like him saying that the 21 million is not set in stone or whatever, or could be changed. Like that actually kind of excites me, because I think the idea that they might try to fork Bitcoin I think it's inevitable that it goes against them. I think they have enough Bitcoin, enough, control over enough Bitcoin, they could definitely pump the price of their shitcoin. But the thing is that they aren't using like they don't have enough to pay all the miners to continue to mine their shitcoin. So if Bitcoiners who have built this thing and, are the ones that use it every day say, no, we're going to use this chain, then the miners will eventually come back, no matter how much they've temporarily pumped the price. We just end up getting to, double or triple our stack if they're able to pump it up higher than, our Bitcoin, the fixed supply Bitcoin. And so when, we all move our new coins back to the solid chain, or the scarce chain, then it seems like miners have to follow. And it means that you might end up with a situation where people that are mining in their homes and, whatever, much more decentralized mining are successful for a while. It just, it just seems like it could have really positive effects, because I would imagine that if BlackRock's going to do something like that, they would also try to use some sort of legal attack where, you're not allowed to mine, the like scarce chain or something like that, and so you would have some the incentives to use the better Bitcoin would be, the economic incentives would be there, the legal incentives would be, against it. And so all of the institutionalized stuff would be like half trapped, and we would try to, it might take a long time, and that would make it scary. But but I think it might actually end up, if that were to happen and, things were to play out the way I think they would, then I think it would ultimately be good for Bitcoin. I mean, it's one of those situations where, like, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
I think it'd be great for Bitcoin.
And it would potentially kill BlackRock, which would be great.
Man, if Bitcoin kills BlackRock as like a little mini boss on the way to central banks, I'd just be like, yeah. Like,
So-
it was Lord of the Rings
so
stuff. man.
glorious.
Yeah.
So glorious. But I think it also lends itself to, like, when I see is it informs me, I think, with more clarity of the perspective of kind of the shitcoiners and the people who are in Bitcoin Cash, is that, I saw people tweeting and talking about this, is that BlackRock said this as if this meant that Bitcoin was inevitably going to have inflation, as if somehow, and because Saylor tweeted it, is like, the two most influential people in Bitcoin. And I'm like, so you genuinely think that the loudest people in the public sphere somehow have control over this? Like, so of course you thought, like,
It ain't democracy,
Bitcoin
man.
was hijacked.
Yeah.
And
You thought
because
that
your
Roger,
entire idea of consensus is who's got the most likes on Reddit.
Yeah.
I mean, like, that's so stupid. And I don't mean that insultingly. It's just so unbelievably ignorant of how it works. Like, nobody, like, it's just like Peter Todd talking about there's going to be inflation, and Luke talking about how we need 300 kilobyte blocks. And like, everybody has their own proposal and their own thing. And what anybody who honestly looked at it should have learned from the Blocksize War is that all of these proposals and all of these plans and everybody's opinion doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. That's not what runs Bitcoin. There is a far more complex set of dynamics that actually are at play. And the whole idea that, like, BlackRock, because look at all these coins they have these coins on behalf of other people. And all I can think is that, like, so this is the scenario in your mind, is that they're holding these for millions of other people. Like, they didn't buy these coins. They're not the buyers of them. Normal people in retirements and in brokerage accounts and exchanges are buying this ETF. They hold this on behalf of millions of other people.
BlackRock, though, from using it to...
No, it wouldn't. No, it wouldn't. I'm not saying that that's like BlackRock's not going to make this decision. I'm
Right.
saying, thinking about the dynamics of all of the people involved in this, and they have no presence on the network. I bet they don't run a node.
Right.
Mhm.
I bet I highly doubt they do anything of significance when it comes to the Bitcoin network.
Agreed.
So supposedly the scenario is that BlackRock owns all of these coins on behalf of everybody else, and they are going to propose a fork to BlackRock coin, and this doesn't instantly get memed to hell as BlackRock coin for months in advance, and they don't get absolutely lambasted with everything under the sun and DDoSed for weeks leading up to this by a bunch of autistic people who just love how much they get to troll this company and destroy all of their ability to do normal communications day to day. And they are going to take all of these people's coins and they are going to steal them, withdraw them without any show, without any issue. They're going to fork the coin. They're going to dump it on on real Bitcoin in a massive sell-off on how many different markets, what exchange are they going to use? Where are they going to get the liquidity to dump this? They're going to dump all of this. They're going to crash the price. Nobody's going to do anything except go, oh, well, real Bitcoin's price is lower right now. I guess we're done. This was such a great experiment, but now our only option is to download Blackrock coin and update my start 9 to the one that's inflated. And over a long period of time, the one that's literally inflating its currency is somehow going to maintain a higher value than the one that's running on my start 9. And if I just don't fucking do anything and just wait for it a couple of months, something tells me we're going to win. Something tells me we're going to win again.
Yeah,
you know?
I think the essential difference, right, is like the idea that you can like take, hey guys, you know all those dollars you own, we're going to make them worth less to go and fund a war in Ukraine. Like that is an en masse unpopular idea, and you need it to be popular, and in order for it to work. And the only reason they can do it, despite its unpopularity, is the fact that they have control over how much of it they can print. So, like, you're asking everyone to do what's done to fund wars completely coercively, voluntarily. So, like, every single person or the majority of Bitcoiners have to agree to all make their Bitcoins worth less to satisfy BlackRock. It's so vanishingly unlikely. But let's also not kid ourselves. Though they're going to be a lot more competent than Bitcoin X and Bitcoin Super and Bitcoin Faith and Bitcoin Diamond and all these crap coins that came out in 2017. They're going to do better than that, right? Because those were all easily
They'll
dumpable.
take a legal approach.
Right. Those were all dumpable KYC free for the most part. BlackRock coin is not going to be dumpable without KYC. So, and they're going to get a lot of support from regulatory bodies and stuff like that. That none of that existed in 2017. You didn't have like a Trump in office that might work with these people and push against us. So it's definitely going to be a bit more meticulously planned. It's not going to be Roger Ver having a temper tantrum and Barry Silbert and Brian Armstrong. It's not going to be people like that. They're going to be a lot more careful with how they do it. They'll still lose, and I don't want to give them ideas, but let's also just like gear up for it. It's going to be a bit more interesting than that, I think.
The interesting thing to me is that I think in that situation, Lightning Network could be the ultimate decider, because you're going to choose which one the Lightning Network is on. And one of those Lightning networks is going to completely break and be completely inaccessible to whatever the network is.
Why? Because you can use Lightning to move between the two, can't you? Like, that's sort of the point of Lightning, is that
you could do like an atomic swap, but your node determines which network you're on.
Oh, good point.
So everybody has to download Blackrock coin node and connect it to their LND and C Lightning.
Yeah, they lose all the infrastructure. It
has to be the entire implementation structure is different on Blackrock coin, which means the entire Lightning network will probably just vanish on Blackrock coin. And they're like, what LSP is going to be like? Yeah, we're gonna Lightning. Nostr is going to switch all over to Blackrock coin.
Yeah, it's a very good. It's a very good point. That's like all the infrastructure, all the wallets, even the on-chain wallets and all that stuff. Side chains like Liquid, all of them have to, offer a parallel, world of infrastructure that would work on top of it, and we're kind of entrenched at this point. So we do have.
And if they try to make it so that you can't sell it unless it's KYC, they have to control who can download and use the node. The node software, which means that none of every Bitcoin app will just not talk to it by default, because they have to control it so that you can't dump it, which means that you can't spin up your own node and send it. You can't allow peer-to-peer markets to dump the coin.
Yeah. And I mean, if they do a fork and you have to upgrade or start a new node to do this, I don't see any exchange like Bitfinex or, outside exchanges changing the ticker symbol BTC for the original Bitcoin, so the BlackRock coin would end up with a different ticker symbol, right?
And will Fidelity go along with it? Because they're not, they're actually custodying their own, and they're the third largest ETF. It's just, the fight would be such a mess. Like, it would be such an overplay of the hand of BlackRock. And I think it would be glorious because of that. Like, I think it would be a disaster for them.
And it would only work if, so they do this fork or whatever, and then they convince all of, a huge majority of mining hash power to switch to that. And then that hash power also takes a break to attack the old coin, the old chain, right? Because as long as the old chain's going to then we have both coins. As long as both coins are still going and still healthy, like that's just a win for us too. We just got free coins. So it's just the attack part that we're worried about, right?
I think like the more they try and control it, the worse it gets and the harder it is to get people in the system, so that it's catch-22s for them all over the place.
Yeah.
Like I don't see how they do it.
And we'll have to teach this lesson every 4 years.
That's okay.
I don't think this is the attack, and I've said this before. Yeah. Like the attack on Bitcoin is just every normies and Blackrock and Michael Saylor and all that don't have custody of their coins, and they're inside a walled garden. And if you want to be part of the modern Bitcoin economy, you have to be in that walled garden too. That's it. Like you don't need to fork SMTP to make it suck and to make Google have control over everyone's life. You don't need to do that. Yeah. You just build a system on top of it that everyone's happy to be inside. That's it. Mm-hmm. So it's the KYC matrix, and everyone is voluntarily going to walk into it, and you don't even need to touch the protocol. You don't need to fork it. So if they try and fork it, that's free money for us, or it's completely dead in the water because of KYC making it impossible. That's not what they do. They're just like, here are all these businesses accepting Bitcoin now, but all of them require you to use some sort of wallet that has insane KYC stuff. And again, we have a case study. Like, we should talk about El Salvador a bit, but they're shutting down Chivo, right? But Chivo, as it manifested, was just more and more and more KYC. If you wanted to withdraw money, it was photographs of your face while you did it for converting dollars to Bitcoin. It was things like that, which are just, if everyone is using Bitcoin in that capacity, it's not cypherpunk tech anymore, and there's no fork required.
Yeah. My first thought, honestly, when I saw that was like, oh, okay, they're trying to create some more liquidity at the same way that, the Chinese central bank said that they were banning Bitcoin 15 times in 2017.
Yeah.
So my first thought was like, oh, this is just this year's FUD or whatever. But or this cycle's version of FUD. But if we can use the fear around Blackrock and Michael Saylor or whatever having too many coins to motivate people to run nodes, like there's nothing wrong with that. So
that would be the really beautiful thing about it. Is that became a legitimate discussion, is I bet you would see the node count like really, really spike for the first time in a long time, because there's not really been any strong motivation to do it. And I feel like most of the history of like aggressively running nodes is a history of defensive measures, and so it would be interesting to see for that reason. I think it'd be overall healthy for.
Yeah, I mean, what happened to the node count during 2016 Bitcoin or 2017 when the Classic and XT and Unlimited and all those things were? I mean, like they were running a bunch of Amazon nodes, but which was funny because it was like multiple occasions where somebody hacked them or like
thousands and thousands of Amazon nodes.
They proved it by like DOS like attacking those nodes, and they all like you could send them all offline, like temporarily. And so like, oh look, this is the same. This is all one.
Again, it was kind of catch-22 because, like, on the one hand, like I had a conversation with Greg Maxwell around this. This is like the one friendly chat I've ever had with him, where we were sort of developing an understanding of how the network was structuring itself, trying to figure out, like, because nodes have a user agent where they'll tell each other what node they are, whether it's like Bitcoin Core 25 or Bitcoin Knots 27 or but you had all these Bitcoin Unlimited nodes on the network and all that stuff start to show up. And then we were like, but wait a minute, people can lie in this stuff. And then we started trying
to just change the tag.
Yeah, you
and
can.
It's still core.
But they released a fork of it, or just, a version of Bitcoin Unlimited that lied and said it was core. And they started doing that. And I remember telling Greg about that, and he was like, that changes the game a bit, actually, because then we don't know how many of these people are actually like lining up and ready to pounce on us. So like on the one hand, you want to signal strength and be like, there's loads of us. On the other, you kind of want to keep your trump card up your sleeve. So like, I don't know, you just have, I don't remember the original point I was making with that, but there was like, there was just some interesting context to it. I don't know why that ties back into what you guys were talking about. Sorry.
No, the whole node thing is just really interesting. And actually, you know what? There was a question. We had a bullet point about that. Yeah, Steve had a question. What does a world of decentralized node implementations look like?
Yeah, I think about this all the time, especially with knots becoming more popular. We had that Libit coin a while ago that never really took off. There's been a few other ones. We've never really had anything dominant. Bitcoin Core is still obviously the reference client. It makes me mad when people say that Bitcoin Core is the protocol, because it's not. But yeah, what does it look like if we actually have, 5 or 6 or 10 different healthy open source communities making different projects? Is that going to make changes to Bitcoin harder? Is it going to make it easier? Is it going to be chaos because there's going to be these tiny little edge case differences between the node implementations that makes blocks come invalid? Are we going to have major fights about what the protocol is? If there's
let me like get on this, because this is something I was just like, Luke just like threw a cold glass of water in my face yesterday over this stuff. Okay. And I'm like, he's like, not only is like, there's a reason Knots is just like 1-to-1 porting stuff over and rebasing from core, because if you want to do anything like not use the same database or not the same version of the C libraries or any of that stuff, even if anything in the blockchain gets interpreted differently, that's it. That's divergence. That's a fork. That's everything changes based on that. So if core has like a bug in it that interprets something from like block 80,000 differently to what a newer version of the C library would make the level DB do, you can't use it. So if you come up with like a new version, like what's that guy's name? I can't remember. Libit coin that's like way faster at syncing and all that. Something. Sorry, if you use a different database language, even if all the data in it matches, just something about the quirks of how those things work mean split in the network. So everything has to work in exactly the same way. And it's so unbelievably limited that you can't just look at the consensus rules and go, I'll spin up an identical node that, or a node that does all the same things the same way, but using a different database language or something to make IBD 9 times faster or something. If you do it and lots of people run it, suddenly you're just going to find yourself forked off. And it's like
without a bug, without a consensus bug, you could literally just have the computation end up different.
Yeah, somehow. This is why you have this like absolute pain in the butt with Berkeley DB with this old incompatible version versus Level DB. Like the fact that we changed database language at some point in Bitcoin's history is like a pain in the butt when you're trying to compile stuff and you have to take it into account and there's no workaround. Like that stuff is just, I'm out of my depth a little bit here, but I'm going to go back and reread the conversation between Jason and Luke, because Jason's like, look, I can come up with Level DB just sucks, right? Like it shouldn't take this long to read and write all this data. Why is it taking multiple days to sync a node? And it looks like if you come up with something else, it's not that it's like a 1 in a million chance that it all matches, is that it just never will. Like there's going to be discrepancies in how this stuff goes. Something's going to get read and write differently, and then you fall out of consensus necessarily when you do that. Even if I just find that insane to me. But that's some of these things we think.
Well, I definitely agree with that. I think that's probably true. I haven't done it myself. Just these tiny little differences you can never replicate. But there's another side of that too, where if there was a bug in core, let's say the CVE inflation bug or something, if something happened and then there was another version of Bitcoin where the bug didn't happen in, then all of a sudden that new version of Bitcoin, that new different core software would be the right software. Because, the protocol is stored in your mind. Otherwise, you'd have to say that Bitcoin ends in 2106, because right now core ends in 2106. And there's other things about the protocol that are the protocol that are not in core.
Yeah.
It's a tricky thing. Kind of works both ways.
Yeah, like the whole POS EWID purpose of software is what it does. I disagree fundamentally with that. Bitcoin is not what Bitcoin does. Bitcoin is what we want it to be, and we try and make the software reflect that as best we can, which is why it changes. Right. And the former concept just means if there's a bug, then it's never a bug. which is just stupid. Like
Mm-hmm.
we try and make it conform to our expectations, along with what's technically feasible and politically possible.
The code is defense for a social layer to prevent
misuse and abuse,
arbitrary change and misuse of it.
Yeah.
Like it's a dynamic of defending a momentum of a standard, so to speak.
Yeah. This is why if someone
inertia.
says something like really bad and you know they didn't mean it, you don't take the words literally. You look at it and go, yeah, I understand. You just used the word wrong. I understand that's not what you meant. Right. So like we look at intentions behind things because they're what's relevant, not,
Right. Like the protocol is not that the date can only be 32 bits. The protocol is about like the date going forever.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin Core is only in 32 bits.
Yeah.
The protocol has nothing to do with 32 bits. So there's a difference.
So if we have to have a hard fork for the date thing.
We don't. It can be a soft fork.
Yes. Yeah.
Well, okay, but is it actually a soft fork, or is it just like we do it the way like you build it into the software far enough ahead of time that
do a hard fork so early that it doesn't matter? Yeah. I'm pretty sure you can actually do it as a soft fork.
Really?
There's benefits to both. No, you can do it as a soft fork, but there's benefits to doing a hard fork and clearing up technical debt at some point anyway. But that's never going to work. The amount of politicization, a hard fork, the wish list for that goes on forever. Everyone's got something they want to do if we hard fork Bitcoin. And the only real acceptable way to do it would be we only fix the timestamp because everyone's got an opinion on all the other things.
Don't try to fix anything else because then you've immediately politicized it.
That was my question was, if we need a database change, can we build it into a hard fork that's just planned that many years in advance?
But that's a different point. You can Bitcoin Core can have whatever database language you want in it. The point is everyone uses the same one. And even with different versions of
that means
Core,
you can't change it though, right? Because if you change it, then how do you get the ones that aren't updated to not split like if you have a new change that has to be compatible with the old change, how do you square that circle? Yeah. So you can't change the database.
It just becomes incredibly difficult, and a hard fork doesn't fix it though. Is that like a hard fork doesn't help the situation?
No, hard fork doesn't, because the ultimate problem we're getting at here is that everyone has to be doing exactly the same thing for Bitcoin not to fall out of consensus. And it doesn't. That thing can change. It's just it always has to change together. So the accidental hard fork in 2013 was something of this trivial nature, right? Where it was just
that was Mike Hearns, right?
I don't remember who was responsible for it. Probably that rings a bell.
I think it was Hearns.
I mean, this is just me pulling something out of my ass that becomes kind of arbitrary. But what if you did a kind of light client, like pruned node for the old database and created a new database and ran it for 5 years as a fallback if there's a disconnect, and basically tried to make the slowest possible thing where there was always it basically didn't break the node. It just shifted back and you just doubled up the resources essentially.
We've done many things of that nature anyway. That's kind of the neutrino concept for LND or the Folgore concept for CLN, where you can just run in SPV mode until you have things synced. That's not bad. I guess the concern trolling around that is just if people spoof and just act like halfway solutions end up getting used as the full solution is the problem. So, and then if you're like, that becomes a systemic thing where it's like, look, every single LND user is just running a neutrino. Like no one actually has the blockchain anymore and no one is actually using it that way. Then it's like, we should never have made this tool because now that it's there, everyone's just using it as a shortcut and we're screwed. So I think that's probably the why you wouldn't do that. And that's why obvious things that should exist never do, because someone was like, that we can create a weakness here if we do that.
Yeah.
For the when you mentioned the soft fork for the 2106 bug, do you have a specific solution in mind, or were you just saying you think there is one?
It's just I don't know what it is specifically. Luke has told me repeatedly you can just do it as a soft fork if you want. I think it's just annexing, adding data to something. that just sticks the extra. So you run out of room in one field, and then you just add another field.
Stick it somewhere
Like,
else. Yeah.
right. And that field has to.
Right, but like nodes that are running right now, how would they know to look for that extra field without updating?
That's a good point. I don't know.
So I've looked into this a lot, and my solution is that like you can do this if you have like a 30-year period of, you know, non-updating nodes interacting with the new nodes, but at some point the old nodes just stop.
Yeah.
No matter what.
Yeah.
They don't continue on their own course, but they'll just stop. But it's still kind of a soft fork.
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah, I don't know, because all blocks to them at that point would look weird and in the wrong time. So I don't know how you get around the fact that blocks time starts to be wrong. Yeah. But if Luke says it could be done as a soft fork, I mean, he said SegWit could be done as a soft fork, and he was the only guy that realized that. So I mean, I'm sure he's right.
I never. I never.
Don't bet against
Luke. Yeah. No, I won't bet against Luke. That's for sure.
I actually have kind of a hard stop here.
Me too.
So let's actually hit a couple. We don't have a huge set of other news items. The other really big thing that I just wanted to get to in a general sense was basically all the reserve stuff. And I don't mean just
El Salvador,
United States Bitcoin Reserve, but El Salvador. A Brazilian congressman has pushed a proposal. Japanese government official has pushed a proposal. Obviously, it's looking like it in the U.S. Like, what is your? I want the full take. I want to know, like, how do you think about people saying this is it? Bitcoin is sold out, and everybody's clamoring for. Everybody's like, oh, states buy Bitcoin, yay! As if this is a state thing, or is this inevitable? Does this matter for anything other than, this is the era in which we move into that landscape and things get crazy? I just want to hear your thoughts on all the whole reserve stuff, because I feel like things are buzzing all over the place.
Yeah, I don't know how you get to, global monetary reserve without governments getting involved. So, I mean, it just seemed like it's a step that's got to happen. I'm not super excited about the fact that, I don't want the U.S. government to have money that will save it from, economic disaster. But at the same time,
I don't want to save the dollar.
Right. Yeah.
I don't want to save
that's
the
the thing, is I don't want, I don't want dollars backed by Bitcoin or whatever. But at the same time, I don't know if it makes a smoother transition possible. I mean, again, we've talked about this a bunch, but if a crypto dollar or whatever, the stable coin, whatever, spreads and basically displaces most other currencies, and all we have left is the crypto dollar and Bitcoin, well, then they can't print anymore. Like, they lose anyway. So like we win. It's like heads we win, tails you lose. Like, it doesn't, we still, like, I feel like it all goes in one direction. The question is just how bumpy is the ride going to be on the way there? So I don't know. I mean, it's all good. Numbers going to go up. So it's going to be interesting.
Yeah, the thing that gets me on this is that, like, the idea of all of them holding reserves and whether or not it helps the dollar or whatever fiat currency, I think is a little bit moot. It really just matters for timing, is who benefits more than everyone else.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that is the only way to actually rein in government spending. Is for the value of your currency to be seen based on your Bitcoin reserves, like how much Bitcoin you're holding. Like, that's how you actually institute. Like, government fiat isn't going to go away. They're still going to print their own unit to have their own network and their own level of control. The question is, does the price of their unit get reflected if there are more of them in relation to Bitcoin? Like, it ultimately just matters when Bitcoin is liquid enough, is what is its price related to Bitcoin? How many sats can you get for the unit of that fiat? And I think a Bitcoin standard means that every fiat is ultimately backed by Bitcoin, and every government has to freak out about whether or not they're getting rid of their Bitcoin reserves this year or they're adding to it. And that's how you reprice the world in Bitcoin. And that's, I don't know, that's how that looks to me. It's like, an age where the internet is the media isn't an age where NBC and CNN doesn't exist. It's where CNN fails at launching CNN Plus streaming service. And, Peacock is the only thing, it's when they are weak and they don't have the power that they think they have, because the shift of where the equilibrium lies and what's valuable and what the dominant thing is just moves into the new landscape. Like the internet and what the internet thinks about NBC is now, it seems to be the reality. Like the internet is the new media. And in the same way, it will not be the dollar price in Bitcoin and, what the US government says about Bitcoin when you have 20 countries fighting for, Bitcoin reserves and trying to be the fiat that's the most backed by Bitcoin. It will literally just create their own obsolescence. It will be their price in Bitcoin that will determine whether or not people want their fiat, because somebody will do it better. Or they'll just withdraw Bitcoin. They'll literally just use Bitcoin.
I think that's a great point, man. I hadn't really looked at it that way. It's really compelling.
It just means that your Bitcoin reserve is what your value of fiat is.
Yeah.
Like, that's it.
And also, like, you've got to rely on this, like, countries hate each other and don't trust each other, so they'll insist on the reserves existing. Like,
exactly.
A lot of my, like, it's going to be okay self-comfort and cope I have for how awful the world is falling apart is that I need countries to actually be genuinely hating each other. Like, the scariest conspiracy theory to me is, like, Russia and China and America all actually get on just fine, and it's all just for show. That's the thing that terrifies me.
If all governments collude, we're in trouble. Like the Five Eyes are like literally the worst thing right now, that they all cooperate to spy on everybody. I mean, it's like the Catholic Church fell out of power. Like they lost political power. They didn't go away. They still exist.
They're still there. They're just not the de facto government. Like if the Pope comes out and says something, the whole world doesn't just immediately start murdering everybody who doesn't follow their rule. They're still powerful. They're just largely irrelevant.
Yeah. If you have the same sort of devaluation of government power, that'd be great.
Yeah.
I was going to be a bigger fan of the reserves if there was some kind of proof of reserves, or they had to show their addresses or something that they actually had these coins on chain. Like I'd really like that.
Yeah.
But I mean, other than that, I agree with Jeff. Like you can't stop anybody from getting Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it's like my take on it. Hopefully, I can do it in like 1 minute. Is when it came along as a proposal, like the government will own loads of money. The sort of normie take on it was like normie who likes Bitcoin a bit or something was like, oh, that'll make the price go up a lot. And then today, wait a minute, that's bad because if they own loads of Bitcoin, they might start pushing for changes to the protocol and there's nothing you can do about it. And I'm like, that was not. So you've gone through a bunch of stages of like processing the information that were not how anyone that's been in Bitcoin for a long time looked at it. The way we look at it when the US government says, all right, we're going to buy loads of Bitcoin is, right, this is going to make number go up a lot and it's going to create a bunch of problems. Can we defend against those problems? And for the most part, all of the problems they might talk about or they might present to us have not just already been sort of countered in theory, but have actually happened in practice and we've dealt with them in the past. So like we've already addressed it for a long time on this show, which is pushing for changes to consensus, hostile takeover, that sort of thing. We've seen it happen before. We know what to do to defend against it. And we've literally got a track record and case studies of how we've survived these kinds of attacks. So it's amazing to me that anyone would present that as a concern. But saying there are no concerns is also not accurate too, right? So we weren't all exuberant that the US government was going to buy loads of Bitcoin. But at the same time, it's just pragmatic. We knew that it was always a possibility. There's nothing inherent in Bitcoin that stops powerful, evil people owning lots of it. We know they're going to buy it if it's as good as we think it is. And we've been thinking since day zero, how do we make sure we're protected if and when they do it? The only real way you can do it is to make sure you own as much of it as possible before they do, which is what the majority of us have been doing, and which is why we basically feel pretty fine right now. So, like there was some sensible, like there was some OPSEC and things involved in that. Like maybe don't be too public about it. Maybe keep your identity private. Like, who set a precedent for having lots of Bitcoin and keeping their identity not well known? The guy who invented the whole system, right? So it's like we know what we're doing here. Like we've been thinking about these things. Like it's time to like look at this thing and just go, yeah, there's some intelligent minds in this community. Like we're not naive, and it's a practical thing. It's not just ideologues going like, yeah, Bitcoin's going to save and fix everything. Oh no, a quantum computer. Like, just please give us a bit of credit for having like planned all this out.
What are you gonna do when the internet goes down? I mean, you know.
Yeah, what are you gonna do when there's no more internet? I bet you didn't think of that. What are you gonna do when someone makes it?
Think about that one.
Checkmate,
Oh, God, got us. Checkmate.
Man, I got 3 minutes. I wanted to do El Salvador too, but I just don't think we got time.
Is he gonna buy like he's gonna sell Chivo and then buy Bitcoin with the money?
Well, they did just buy like 10 Bitcoin instead of 1 Bitcoin.
Yeah, that was $1 million, man. He YOLO'd 0.1% of his new stash. It was tiny. Do you understand the meme, the legend he would have become? Like he's already like very popular, right? But imagine Bukele if he just YOLO'd the entire stash of $3 billion on Bitcoin the minute the IMF send him the money. Can you imagine? Like, just
we're so amazing. Oh
that would have been like, I would have made a statue to him and put it in like the middle of Vancouver or something. Like, just he should have done it for the memes.
He should have done it for the meme. He still has an opportunity.
Yeah, maybe the cash hasn't cleared
I know
yet.
you listened to Guy's Roundtable. I know you listened to the Roundtable. And it's very important for you to consider this.
Yes.
Because you would be a legend.
Maybe the check hasn't cleared yet, and yesterday was just a dip. So he was like, I'm buying the dip and bought more coins than usual.
Yeah.
Like, what is the process of getting
That's just what he had in his bank account.
How do you get $3 billion? Like, what's the transfer process of that? Does someone from the IMF have to go to a bank with 2 forms of ID or something? Like,
no, they just ACH. They Zell it. They Zell it to him.
Zell. His cell phone number.
They got those big Zell limits. It's just straight to his email address.
Guys, I gotta go, man.
Yeah, man. All right. We will close it out here. Thank you guys. This was a good one. Jeffrey, you suck for being late. What an embarrassment. Can't believe I'm related to you.
I had to get a car battery for our wonderful mother. So
I was being a hero.
What is happening?
See, you missed all the best stuff.
That is amazing.
All right. See y'all later.
Thank you guys. Later.
See ya.
Later.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that conversation. There was actually a number of things we did not get to, as this is usually the case with these. So I want to close this out by hitting all of the bullet points that we missed and just kind of give you a rough rundown of the few other things that happened that I feel like are worth mentioning. And our first bullet goes to Casa. They have released Praetorian. Casa is the multi-sig wallet. I have had the gold membership for a long time. I actually don't have a ton in it just because I build my own multi-sig now. But I've still been using it and I am still a fan. I love trying out and having all of the multi-sig services. But they have released and announced Praetorian, which is literally designed to safeguard government reserves. This is about building state-level self-custody with military-grade encryption and best-in-class support and all of that good stuff. There's a bunch of cool features and stuff that they push, like a deepfake protection, and they have a 24/7 emergency line. The stuff that you would think for like a really high-class, like super professional multi-sig. But I think the key takeaway here is that there is a market for this now. This is going to become a thing, and holding reserves in like enormous amounts of value in Bitcoin with large institutions, with corporations, with governments, and with extremely high security tolerance or low tolerance when it comes to edge cases and the desire for incredibly professional and deep state-level adversary security is going to become a normal market. And I think it is unwise to dismiss how powerful that could be and how much could actually happen in that market for designing incredibly fault-tolerant cold storage security systems. That's just kind of cool. Bullet. The Czech Republic has now removed capital gains on any Bitcoin held for longer than 3 years. I might move to the Czech Republic. Bullet. Canton of Bern, Switzerland approves a feasibility study on Bitcoin mining for grid stability. Basically a breakdown of the impact on dealing with or monetizing surplus energy and balancing out the grid. And this is totally expected to see this kind of research and assessment starting to get in full swing. And there's also there was a company, I can't remember the name of the company, but they've been targeting California more often because California, in their effort to go super green and everything, has overly incentivized solar power. And in doing so, it's actually dumping so much solar power back onto the grid, and it's making the utilities mad because they're paying for it. They've literally now they've lobbied to stop having to pay and deal with the load back on the grid. So now suddenly California has kind of shot itself in the foot in regards to properly incentivizing the solar, because now a whole bunch of solar people kind of got screwed and the economics are getting completely thrown out of whack. So the company now is trying to fill in the gap by deploying miners to eat up everybody's excess solar power rather than them being able to get money back from the grid or whatever the cut is that happened in relation to that. Bullet. Morocco has actually lifted their ban. They've had cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin and everything banned for a while, and now they're looking to set in regulation and lift the ban. Kind of cool. Bullet. A Chinese car company, Kango, has just randomly announced or quietly released, and it's become known now, but they're the third largest public miner in China. It's just a car company. Who'd thunk? One I'm really sad that we didn't get to was Hawk to a Coin. I specifically put it in the list and I added it in the Keat chat so we could definitely get back to it, and we didn't talk about Hawk to a Coin. But and I guess this is more of a shitcoin insider sort of episode, but Hawk to a Girl decided to make a token and had a whole bunch of the tokens for herself, and a whole bunch of really, really dumb people apparently, or just complete and utter degens, put tons of money into this token, and then she absolutely hella rug pulled all of them, and the price was absolutely obliterated. She made a ton of money. A whole bunch of people are calling for her to go to jail and threatening to sue and all of this stuff. And honestly, if you bought Hawk to a Coin, you deserve to lose the money. And if everybody got scammed with Hawk to a Coin, she deserves, I don't care. She deserves it. That's ridiculous. It's 2024. It's your fault if you lose money on Hawk to a Coin. I can't care anymore. Bullet. Roger Ver went on Tucker Carlson and talked all about how Bitcoin was hijacked by the feds and Blockstream was run by Bilderbergs and stuff. Oh God. So annoying. Like we said, the FUD is all coming back, all the stupid arguments and all the ignorant people are buying into it again. But it is what it is. Bitcoin was destined to be the most hated. I'm probably going to do a guy's take rebuttal to a lot of the things that he said. I still don't believe he should go to prison for 100 and whatever years for tax fraud, even if that's exactly what he did was tax fraud. He should just kind of owe the money and they can get over it. But still, it's just so annoying. He just lies and he just makes... I honestly just can't even help but wonder if it's just pure dishonesty. Like, he doesn't care if he's saying things that he knows aren't true. I mean, he has a history of that. Bullet. There was a really big and really bad bug in Bitcoin Core not too long ago, actually. This happened back in late 2022. And it was just made public. This actually was made public like a month or two ago. I just didn't know about it until December, so I figured it was fair to mention it. But there was a feature added to Bitcoin Core that would enable you to download or find blocks quicker and to get the information necessary in a more compact way. Pun not intended. This is referred to as compact blocks. However, In late 2022, it was discovered that there was a bug that you could manipulate the message for requesting these compact blocks, which would actually crash the node. Just so you understand, that's a really bad bug. Crashing the node is an extremely serious concern. This would mean that you could broadcast this out and shut down the whole network. Well, if everyone was on the same version of Bitcoin Core that had this. And it's interesting to point out that this was a Bitcoin Core feature that was added that wasn't necessary, that then had this potential very, very bad consequence. Something to think about when it comes to what should be nuclear grade software. But it was fixed and merged in 2023, right around May, I believe, and it was only recently disclosed a couple of months ago so that we had the proper history and we could hopefully learn from what could have been a kind of scary mistake. Bullet, Wasabi Wallet, their CoinJoin protocol had a bit of a vulnerability that could potentially de-anonymize a lot of users. This was specifically a flaw that allowed a malicious coordinator to connect inputs and outputs. I have the link in the show notes to the vulnerability report that they released and which versions of Wasabi Wallet, Ginger Wallet, and then the BTC Pay server CoinJoin that are affected. But the newest ones, if you're updated, then it's already been fixed and it shouldn't be a problem. And again, specifically, it's only with a malicious coordinator. So if you trust your coordinator or whoever you're using, or if you're using the Wasabi official coordinator, basically all the same concerns and trade-offs should be considered. That nothing is perfect. Everything is a spectrum. There's always going to be edge cases. And just be careful with your privacy. Privacy is a difficult problem. It's a difficult issue to solve. Another bullet! Fold finally adds authorized users. My wife is finally on the account. I did it immediately. As soon as I got it, I filled that mess out and we got her a card and boom. We now have basically joint accounts and multiple users in an account, and she can log in and she has her own card. And I've wanted that for a really long time. It's a little bit frustrating having only one card with only your name on it. So now literally you can have a family account and everybody can earn sats into one Fold account. That's cool. Another bullet, Uganda confirms that their central bank got hacked for 62 billion shillings, which is actually only $16.8 million. And over half of it apparently, or right around half of it so far has been recovered, or at least according to the source that I have. I also just don't understand, how do you steal from a central bank? I mean, they sent it abroad, so I guess they have to, like the other bank could just be like, no, I'm not going to give it back to you. And depending on how quickly they could get it out in cash or something that's, irredeemable or irreversible, or if they bought Bitcoin with it somewhere, So, but it's still just funny that a central bank can be hacked of a currency that they can just print at will. I don't know, that amuses me for some reason. And our last bullet today is that the Russian president, Mr. Putin, signed a law making digital currencies and Bitcoin taxed as property. Okay, I don't know if that changes much, but it's interesting. It's interesting seeing things be formalized and how different states will treat it differently. So that's the main lineup. That's the news. Those are the important things, and those are the important opinions and takes on those things that you got with Guy and his Roundtable. I hope you guys enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget to check out Fold. You can stack sats like mad, especially with the holidays, especially with gift cards. I shit you not, it is the best way to passively stack sats that I know of. I use it for literally everything almost. And there's a referral code. You can get 20,000 sats for free just for signing up. Check it out. It's right down there in the description, along with a bunch of different links and sources for all this stuff, and to follow everybody and to check everything out, because you should, that's what you should do. And you should subscribe and all that good stuff. And I will catch you on the next episode of Bitcoin Audible. I'm Guy Swan. And until next time, everybody, take it easy, guys.